today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Roni Robbins, author of Hands of Gold. Welcome, Roni.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I am super excited to have you. I have lots of questions, but before we get to those, why don't you give us just a really quick elevator pitch as to what our readers going to find when they open up the cover of this book?
So my grandfather left cassette tapes of his adventures and near-death experiences in Europe and America. And he had some interesting ups and downs in his life, challenges to overcome, which he did, that others of us probably wouldn't be able to. He was told he was going to die from tuberculosis at 26, but he lived till 86. He was part of an experimental treatment that's still used today to treat, it's not experimental anymore, but it paved the way for the medicines that are used today to treat tuberculosis, the largest infectious disease killer in the world. It's a love story. It's, I said, triumph over adversity. It's feel good in the end type of book, and going through the journey of a family a saga, and very similar to any ethnic family, any immigrant ethnic family, and the challenges and triumphs that they go through in their life. It's the life of an everyday hero, and it just happened to me, my grandfather, so I'm documenting it.
Right. Now, when I read it, and maybe I read it wrong, that this is a fiction novel, though. It's based on the life of your grandfather, but it's not 100%. And so you even didn't name him after your grandfather. Is that correct? Like the main character?
There's some similarities in a secretive type of way. It's similar enough.
Right.
Yes, it's very similar to the real names, but I changed the names to protect the innocent, and it gave me a little bit of creative. It gave me a license to be more creative and not to stick to the facts, which as a journalist was very challenging for me in itself, not to stick to the facts, but it gave me an out. It gave me a way to say, hey, it's not totally accurate. I've made up dialogue and I've made up some of the facts that are true to history, though.
Right. So I'm curious, what made you decide to go that way, to do this fiction account rather than a straight memoir?
To protect my family,
okay.
some of whom are still alive, to protect the real identities of the people. And also literary license, like I said, to play with the facts and make them even more dramatic than they were.
Right.
And because as a journalist, and I've talked to other journalists about this, I had to make up dialogue. I don't know what they said to each other.
Right.
So it gave me that ability to use my imagination and think, what would they have said to each other, and not have to say it's totally the truth. I didn't feel comfortable saying it was totally the truth because all I had was cassette tapes, and then I filled in the blanks.
Right. I understand completely. Actually, my second book, An Enemy Like Me, is very loosely based on my grandfather's time and during World War II. But once again, I needed the license to kind of make my point, and to do so, I had to create things that weren't real. And it's funny because my family, as they've read it, my daughter actually called me several times while she was reading it and would say, "Is this part real? Did this really happen in our family?" No, sweetheart, that one was just my imagination. So it was pretty funny. Yes. What is your favorite true story that came out of those tapes from your grandfather?
So I love this part. You're saying parts I made up or the facts?
No, I'd like to know one of the true parts, and we'll get to the made up part. But what's a true part that came from those tapes that you went, "Oh, isn't that wonderful? I'm so glad I have that information."
So there was an article in 1958 in the New York Daily News that talked about a shooting spree with 200 people that were rehabilitating from tuberculosis. And my grandfather spoke with the gunman. And it's in the story that he's asking questions of a man who ends up shooting people. And he was a hero in that moment. And I did capitalize it and make it more dramatic than it was. But what's ironic, which is, I think of irony as part of my name. If you twist my name around, it's irony, which is just is so perfect for me. That I ended up freelancing for the New York Daily News. I was sort of paparazzi reporter for a while in like the 2014 or someplace in there. So years and years later, I freelanced for this same publication. Like I said, it's ironic that he was written up in that publication, but small world type weird life is cyclical events that happen.
Absolutely.
That was the biggest thing.
Right. So you have these tapes from your grandfather. So I'm sure that's where you get a lot of your basic material, but did you have to do any research in order to like really fill out the story?
Absolutely. So I did a lot of research. I used my journalism skills. And again, this was before the internet. I started on this book a long time ago. And this was before the internet. It made everything easy with ancestry.com and all those genealogy tools that are available today. But so I had to go and walk myself to the census material at the National Archives in my area and family history centers. Mormons have family history center, research centers. So I had to physically go to the places that had these kind of documents. And people some of my family members sent me some documents to fill in to cross the T's and dot the I's. But in terms of census figures, it wasn't all census documents, records. It wasn't online as easy as it is now. So I knew how to do research. I do it much easier now for my articles, but back then that's what we had to do. We had to go find the newspaper clippings, and they were all in a card catalog. They were all in the library, and everything was on microfilm and microfiche, and I nobody even knows what that is anymore. But I was
going to say, for all you young listeners out there, go look up those words. They do exist. They really did work at one time. Yeah, it's crazy how things have changed. How now it's actually really easy to do research now. You can just, like you said, you can go to like a family search and all of a sudden you have everything that you need all in one spot. It's really a beautiful thing. Did you have to do a lot of research for like the Hungarian part, and how did you manage that?
I did research on that also through books, and my cousin did a lot of legwork for me, and there were pictures that he sent of the neighborhood where my grandfather lived, which really hadn't changed from the 1990s. It hadn't changed from what it was then and what it was when my grandfather would have lived there in the early 1920s, or early 1920s. So it really hasn't changed. There were cows in the street, and there wasn't running water still. I mean, very few homes still had running water. So the streets still looked like cobblestone, and, so that they really haven't come of age there, but they might have changed to have some bricks, homes with brick now, but I made note of what might have changed.
Right.
But yes, I had to go back and figure out what the area looked like, what people were experiencing at that time.
Absolutely. I like research. How do you feel about it? Is it something you enjoy, or is it just part of the job and you just do it?
Well, what's interesting about it, I don't know. It is part of the job, so I do it. But the fact is that in having those materials available to you gives everything you do credibility. So when the light bulbs go off and you're like, whoa, look what I found. Those are the magical moments that bring it all together. I mean, the fact that I had information, but then I could go to the census and go, oh, look what it says here. And in the family trees, there were little notes on the side that are just like historical nuggets of that I worked into the novel. Right. Everything I had, I worked into the novel, and it gave it legitimacy and credibility. And I feel like that made me feel more confident about what I was putting out there.
I love that feeling when you're doing research and all of a sudden you find a tidbit and you think, oh, that's how I'm going to make my story move forward. Like, this is the piece, this is what's going to do it. And there is just something magical about that when you realize that what you're writing and the history that you're finding actually go together and just turn it right where it needs to go. I love that feeling. So I read that you've mentioned that you're a journalist, and I've read that you won some journalism awards, especially for a piece about Jewish seniors who feel out of touch in nursing homes. And then this book that you wrote starts in a nursing home and it ends in a nursing home. And it's definitely, the Jewish culture. What is it about the nursing homes that, like, I'm just curious, like, was it your journalistic piece that had you start and stop the novel there? Or did the novel get you to do the journalistic piece? I'm just curious how that all happened.
So they are not related in any way. I did the journalism piece way before I did the book. So it's just sort of ironic.
Is it just happenstance? Okay.
Yes, but my grandparents were in a nursing home, and so that's where it starts and ends. And some people have said it reminds them of The Notebook. Sort of, and lots of books are like this. Right. As an author, that there's really nothing new under the sun. You're looking back. You start at a certain point, and then you look back at your life. That sort of scenario has been done before. But it works. It works. To take a step back, to look at the end of life, and then look at the beginning of life and walk it through. Nobody is going to be invested in a character if they know the full story all at once. Right. And nobody is going to feel the emotions at the end of life unless they've understood what the family has gone through or the people have gone through all the way along the journey. So, no, I mean, it just seemed logical to me to begin with him actually doing the taping. And that's at the end. And which is the beginning. So right. I don't know. It's the beginning and the end.
Well, it's the beginning of your story, which is, how you ever came to this point was because there were those tapes. And it's kind of the end of his, which was, here's me trying to tell my posterity all the many things that I need to tell them before I'm not here too. And I think it was pretty amazing. What did your family think about the story? Have you had good reviews, bad reviews, mixed reviews?
So both. So I will also tell you part of my drama, part of my challenge was that I worked with a publisher for several years, and she did, make this story wonderful and did a great editing job on it to really bring out the important parts of the book. But because I was concerned about somebody in my family suing me, I wanted to have some legal protections, and that gave her cold feet. I had cold feet, And then I gave her cold feet and she wanted out. So I had to start again. And 6 months later, I found the publisher who brought me to the finish line and continues to be supportive and communicative, which the first one wasn't. So I had to go through my own journey. So it really did work into the drama of my own experience, going along with my grandfather's experience. So I guess I had to struggle quite a bit to even get this book published. But the answer is that I was concerned about the reaction of the person who requested the cassette tapes to be made, because I didn't ask permission to write the story. And that was brought up in the beginning. I didn't ask permission. And then what the reaction of that same family member would be to how I depicted her relatives. But that's one person. And the rest of my family, which is the vast majority of family members, have been very supportive and have said that I really captured the family well. And they didn't mind that how I depicted the characters and chalked it up to it's fiction, right? And I said, absolutely. So that worked out well for me. Now, would the book have done much better if I had labeled it biography? Probably. You take a chance with the fiction. I don't think Holocaust fiction does as well as Holocaust straight biography. And that's because people are wary of whether this really happened or not. So I've created a bit of a question mark. So I get that. I did take a chance, but it was what I felt comfortable with. And I would do it again. I'm doing it again with my second novel. Even though everyone will know who it's based on, I'm gonna leave myself that out by saying it's fiction.
It is fiction. Well, cool. I like how you're doing that. In a way, what you're doing is really allowing family members to feel at peace with what you're doing. By saying it isn't real. And so if you don't like it, you just don't have to worry about it. It's like it's mostly real, but we don't use names. And therefore, if you don't like it, you can just move on and no one has to know that you're associated with it. And I guess that works out well. I'm curious, having been a journalist and now working on fiction novels, is that a hard transition?
It is a hard transition, but I will tell you, I'm still doing both.
Okay.
I still am a working journalist. I freelance for 2 publications right now. So I have to move between the 2, right? I have to know that I wrote fiction, but it really is based on reality. I feel very strongly about the facts that went into the production of the novel. And my second one is based on my dad's life. I'm working on it. It just began, but it's based on my dad's life. And so, I'm changing the names and making up stuff too. So when somebody says, that wasn't exactly how it happened, I say, I know, it's fiction.
It's fiction, right?
So, but it is hard to navigate and, negotiate and navigate, that change between the 2. But I'm able to do it because I know that they're both facts. They're both facts. Of course, my journalism is straight facts. No question about it. Better be based on reality. And I can be more creative, much more creative with the novel. And it is hard. It is challenging for somebody who has been a journalist for 37 years to, and I haven't been an author as long as I've been a journalist. So, I think I've been an author for maybe 25 or so years from start to finish, but it's a good bit of it. And it took me a long time, but it is hard. It is hard, but I, slowly but surely I do it. I focus mostly on the journalism because it pays the bills, and then more so.
Right. No, I understand that. And I can imagine that would be tough to go from writing in a way where everything has to be facts and fact checked, and opinions can only be stated if you've stated that it's an opinion, where you have to be very careful what you're saying, and then to go to something where you're allowed to make things up.
Mm-hmm.
That must be like a real switch in your brain. Like you almost would have to give yourself time between projects. Say, okay, now I'm switching over to where I'm allowed to just kind of make things up. And when you go back to journalism, you have to remind yourself, okay, we're not making anything up right now.
That part is not hard. That part is actually easy. The harder part is making things up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's because you've been doing the journalism for so long, I can imagine.
Yes. And I was trained. I had a little bit of training on fiction, but on writing a book, it's a much longer process. The articles are very quick and shorter.
Right. Absolutely. And I feel the same way, just like writing short stories, flash fiction, those kinds of things. It's very fast. You sit down and you do it. A novel is a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. So when someone picks up this book, Hands of Gold, and they've read it, now they've had a good story, what else do you want them to take away?
Obviously, I want them to learn from history so we don't repeat it, which we keep doing. So I don't know how effective that's going to be, but I think for those who don't know that much about Jewish culture and the struggles of the ethnic group, certainly with what's going on in the world today, that I couldn't have ever imagined when I was writing this book, that it opens their mind to what that group experienced. And I don't think a lot of people understand that background, that this is something that my people have been experiencing over and over and over again through history, and shouldn't have to. And there are other groups that are experiencing it also. It's not just Jews, it's Blacks, it's other groups that feel persecuted and continue to feel persecuted, and maybe have good reason to feel that way in certain areas, and are feeling unsafe and always have to be looking over their shoulder and acting a certain way. So I think it will open some minds to that. I think it also brings you back to a period of history that maybe people don't know, certainly from this point of view, from a journalist point of view, from a person who went through history, because the book takes you through mostly a little bit of European life, but mostly American culture, and the golden age of TV and radio, and the Great Depression. I'm sort of out of order here, but and the formation of unions, and a little bit of women's rights, and so it brings you to a personal experience with history versus just reading about it in a history book.
I love learning history this way. I loved school. I did well, but I think that maybe history was one of those topics that I always found kind of dry. And I love reading a well-written, well-researched book that gives me a story to kind of hang all the facts on, so that I can learn about what was going on, but see it through the eyes of someone who was experiencing it. And I think it's a wonderful way to learn history. And you did a really good job. I enjoyed the book thoroughly.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you talked about you're writing a book right now based on your father. So this one was on your grandfather. Now you're writing one based on your father. Do you have any idea of when you think this might be out, or is it so new that who knows?
Well, he died about a year ago, so I believe we had a discussion that he didn't want it written before he passed. And I feel like there are many signs that are saying, don't write this. I don't think he wants the book written. That's another thing. But in that I believe in people working through you. Those that aren't alive still sort of show signs of that they're with you and always around you. As weird as that may feel or sound for those who believe in this, it's a little comforting, but it's also quite bothersome because I'm getting mixed messages about it. And the busier I am with freelance means that my father's not ready for me to write this story yet. And it's freaking me out. Because I've gotten some signs from him also to work on the book. I don't know what book. Is it this one, or is it The Hands of Gold, or is it his book? I'm going to write this story one way or another. But the interesting thing is that my dad and my mom are both depicted in Hands of Gold, but people ask me, which one's your mom? Is it this one? And I'm like, or which one's your relative? And I they're always wrong. They're almost always wrong. So they figure the main characters, it's not the main characters.
Right.
So, but my dad, so I'm gonna, as a good author does, it's not really a sequel or anything to Hands of Gold, but it's the characters from one book are going to come and be in the second book. So people might be able to go from one to the other, if they're interested, and the names will be similar, because my working title for the next book is A Mighty Arm, from Hands of Gold to A Mighty Arm.
Fantastic. I was just about to ask you if you had a title yet. So,
and they're both interesting characters. I don't know why I write about men. I find them interesting and different and, fascinating. And they are powerful people, I think, and they have huge influence. But of course, the female main characters, their wives, are also strong women,
right?
And are depicted largely in it through their relationship. And their mothering, and that all works into the novel. So both characters are strong men, interesting characters, not who you think they are. Not who they're just worth writing about. They both have their claim to fame and their mark on history, I think. So. And their interesting relationship with me.
Right. Well, like I said, I enjoyed the book thoroughly. I got a lot from it. So, hey guys, if you want to continue this conversation, head on over to the Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. There you're going to have a chance to win a digital copy of Hands of Gold. So just look for the post and put something that you liked or loved about this podcast. So, Roni, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, talk with you about this book, the one that you're writing, about your journalism in general, how do they get in touch with you?
RoniRobbins.com is where you'll find most everything you need to know, the backstory of the book and where to get the book and where I'm talking next or signing books. You got to spell my name right.
Right.
It's
RONI.
ROBBINS. And .com, you'll find most everything there. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. Nope, we can't call it that. X. If anyone's still on that, and Instagram and TikTok. My actor's son did my TikTok, so when he takes off, I take off. So look for that. Most of them are Roni Robbins. Some are Roni Kane, Kayne. Robbins, that was my maiden name, or Hands of Gold. So if you Google me, you will find me. It says I'm a public figure, would you believe? It's amazing what you find when you Google yourself.
Yes, it is.
You have a huge ego like I do. So anyway, yes, you will find me. I promise.
Wonderful. And guys, I will have all those links in the show notes, so they'll be easy for you to find and just click on. Run right out and grab the book, Hands of Gold. It's fabulous. You'll love it. Make sure once you read it that you go ahead and review it, because as authors, we love those reviews. And Roni, I want to thank you so much for being with me today. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.